this video obviously has an way big agenda, whereas me, I don't really care. I don't even think Atomix and Weybig are that different in strength. Maybe, like, you could argue Atomix is slightly stronger, but that's about it. I think they're both at about the same, like, level. However, as you see in this video, him and people in his comments think that Weybig could just, like, one-shot Atomix. Even though he didn't even really one-shot the ultimates that Atomix did kind of one-shot. So that's interesting, at least.
The question of who Ben's second most powerful alien is one that frequently pops up within the fandom. From Ben's vast catalog of transformations, 3 typically emerge as contenders: Clockwork, Atomix, and Weybig.
Yeah, so neither of them is the strongest, or the second strongest, I should say. Feedback is. He has similar feats, plus a universal one with the Annihilarch, and he's a direct counter to both of them. So even if they tried, Feedback would still beat them.
Is superior to that of the moon itself. Jumping ahead, one of Weybig's more impressive feats is reacting to and overpowering the Incursion Conquest Ray in Frogs of War. The weapon is capable of covering solar distances in seconds, traveling from Earth to Pluto and completely annihilating the dwarf planets.
The first part of this video is him listing off feats with calculations, which doesn't really make sense in verse. It's just a way for him to use those feats to make it seem like Weybig is so strong and so much stronger. Like, you can tell from the start of the video, he's starting it with a bias.
Kinetic duplicate of Weybig absolutely pulverizes a planet. The commonly accepted calculation of this feat puts it at the dwarf star level.
He even uses non-canon feats from the game. It has like a clear, definitive, oh, look how strong he is, even though it's not even canon, really. He also uses calcs for Atomix, because he knows, due to his lesser amount of appearances and lesser amount of large-scale attacks, that he's not gonna have as many calcs as Weybig, and he's gonna look like weaker by comparison. Again, inverse calculations are pretty dumb. Unless there's no other way to connect the characters between each other, there's no reason to use calculations, as you could just scale characters off each other depending on who they fought. He even knows this.
Some have argued that Ultimate Humongousaur beats Weybig because he could lift Weybig, but Kevin can also lift Alien X, so like, whatever.
Alien X is not heavy or responsive in that situation. Weybig got legitimately thrown around by Ultimate Humongousaur against his will. And if you're gonna use the Weybig feat of him lifting the gate that's as, heavy as the moon, then why not use the Ultimate Humongousaur feat for him being able to lift up and throw down Weybig? It's almost like you're trying to have an agenda or something, I don't know.
Comparatively, Weybig's feat is more impressive, but they're both superior to the Ultimate Aliens, so there's not much else to be said.
Actually, if you look at their feet side by side, Weybig just punches them and they kinda get up, whereas Atomix goes blow for blow, head to head in an attack, and he quite clearly overpowers Ultimate Humongousaur at full power, and puts him down in 1 or 2 attacks. And it's not to say that Weybig didn't also beat the Ultimates. He did, but to portray as he's more impressive when Atomix had a way clearer and decisive victory is kinda disingenuous. Let's put it in perspective. Ultimate Humongousaur got punched by Weybig and then he got up. And then after a few minutes, he even threw Weybig to the ground. If we look at what Ultimate Humongousaur did against Atomix, he went punch for punch in a straight hit for hit, got overpowered immensely, and then he got hit with one attack and he had to detransform and then transform into Ultimate Spider Monkey, who also got clapped very easily.
as this fusion is actively made by the weakest versions of both characters, has none of his cybernetic enhancements, nor the power that he stole in Ultimate Alien Force. Without no way to say that Malgax is superior to the malware Weibig fought.
This argument doesn't really mean anything. The Vilgax in Omniverse has feats comparable to other versions of Vilgax by scaling to Ben's aliens, and malware is not as strong as the malware that fought Weibig, sure, but that malware also overpowered Weibig, so it doesn't really mean anything as well. We just don't know how strong this malware is on his own.
Still strong enough to survive the epicenter of a nuclear explosion based on how Max defeated him in the original series, but overall, he's still one of the weakest versions.
Scaling him to himself before the show is just stupid when we see him and even underlings of his scale to Ben's current aliens. It just doesn't make any sense why he would be that much weaker when he can fight current Ben.
Had absorbed all of Galvan B, a large chunk of Galvan Prime, and all of the Galvanic Mechamorphs.
He didn't actually absorb Galvan B or the species. What is bro yapping about?
Unless you can argue that Vilgax on his own, without any of his enhancements, is somehow stronger than an entire moon, the entire species of Galvanic Mechamorphs, and a large segment of Galvan Prime's planet, there is no way to say that
You don't have to prove that because you're wrong about what happened. I'm sorry. Nobody has to prove that. You're just wrong about the events in the series.
Scaling in reference to Weibig. Tie this all together with Weibig effortlessly defeating a warlord Vilgax who had grown to his size, and the narrative of which of these aliens is stronger becomes rather clear.
First of all, there is no narrative, and if anything, it goes against what you're saying. Second of all, that Vilgax doesn't have any scaling unless you scale him to Weibig. So you're scaling Weibig to Vilgax, who scales to Weibig. It's called circular reasoning. Third of all, it's funny you mention him defeating Vilgax in combat, and the narrative as well, because right in the Malgax episode, those both go against you. Malgax not only declares themselves stronger than they've been, but after defeating Atomix, they say no alien Ben has would be strong enough to defeat them. This proves that even though, as you've shown, Vilgax fought Weibig, beating Atomix is enough for him to know none of Ben's aliens can beat him. Which shows that after fighting Atomix, Vilgax doesn't think Weibig can actually defeat him. And you might say, wait, hold up, what about Alien X? Doesn't this also imply that Alien X is weaker than Malgax or is weaker than Atomix? Well, no, actually, because Vilgax nor malware ever fought Alien X. So this statement wouldn't apply to them. It would apply to Weibig, however, who fought both of them. Something I've seen in the comments of his video is that Vampire somehow scales to Malgax, but Vampire doesn't beat him. He actually uses Feedback, who is stronger than either Weibig or Atomix, to absorb energy from Malgax, and then defeat him by blowing his shit up. Vampire did not fight on equal grounds with Malgax at all.
Who Ben's second most powerful alien was, DJ Wyatt answered with Atomix. While offer statements can and should be taken as rather clear cuts a lot of the time, in the case of Ben 10, it's more complicated than that.
It's cool if you don't take the DJ Wyatt statement on its own seriously, that's fine, but Duncan also mentions how Atomix could create a whole star if he wanted to, which would put at the very least on a similar level with Weibig, if not way stronger.
Additionally, they're considered Weibig Ben's sixth strongest alien, while Matt Wade, prior to Atomix's introduction, thought Weibig was Ben's second strongest alien. Both these statements can't be true simultaneously, because Matt's statement was during Omniverse as well, and not enough aliens had been introduced to make Weibig fall back by 4 whole spots.
As you mentioned in your own video, the Matt Wayne statement is before Atomix is even introduced. And if anything, DJ White's statement about Weibig being his 6th strongest alien makes way more sense. Think about it. You have characters like Alien X, you have characters like Gravitak, which can create a black hole, characters like Clockwork, which can reverse, stop, or erase time. We even see him kill Weibig on screen. Feedback, who can hold a big bang, and you can pick your poison from another one, but keep in mind that Peskydusk can probably mind control him or something, or there's a plethora of aliens that you could argue could beat Weibig in a fight, like Big Chill or something. How would he even touch Big Chill? I don't know, but Big Chill could probably froze him. I'm not saying Big Chill is necessarily stronger, but you can see how being the 6th strongest alien of Ben is closer than being the 2nd strongest. Also, the Matt Wayne 2nd strongest quote-unquote statement also contradicts your own narrative, because he says maybe Weibig, he doesn't even know, he's not sure, but also in the statement itself, he says how Topik would be able to scare him and therefore probably defeat him. So even in this statement, Topik is a contender for Weibig. If you want to talk about statements not being reliable, well, this being the same ray that destroyed Pluto comes from Duncan confirming it. It's not actually stated in the show, and it's Weibig's best canon feat.
Weibig would beat Atomix lightly in the same way he beat Ultimate Echo Echo and Ultimate Alien, as Atomix's best scaling is merely because Atomix is just not close. Weibig would win with honestly minimal to mid difficulty, solidifying his place as Ben's 2nd or 3rd strongest alien.
Weibig being able to defeat Atomix the same way he beat the Ultimates, when he couldn't even beat the Ultimates the same way Atomix beat them, is way too weird for me. It's like a very strange argument. Like, okay, Atomix beat Ultimate Humongosaur way worse, but somehow Weibig beats him to the same extent that he beat Ultimate Humongosaur. How does that make any sense? Even then, how's your argument that he can beat him to the same extent he beats the Ultimates when they both beat them relatively similarly? What kind of scaling is that?
As Clockwork still exists. Weibig versus Clockwork is a different discussion altogether, one which I think is actually pretty close.
To reference the title of this video, Weibig versus Clockwork is not even close. Clockwork wins with no contest. Also, I want to point out that when Ben 10K does his strongest fusion, his strongest transformation that he has, he doesn't transform into a combination of Alien X and Weibig, he transforms into a combination of Alien X and Atomix. How is that for narrative implications? And we know that Weibig fusions are not even that big. Look at like the one with Upchuck. He's big, but he's not that big, so it's not like the size was a problem. It's just Ben 10K views Atomix as his 2nd strongest alien, which I don't even necessarily agree with, but if we're talking about narratives, like I said, unlike this person, I don't have any agendas. I think it's fair to believe that either of them could beat the other depending on the day. At the end of the day, they're not Ben's 2nd strongest aliens. Maybe physically you could argue that they're the 2nd strongest aliens. And in that case, I would go Alien X, Atomix, and then right below Weibig. Very, very close. But Atomix may be slightly stronger. But that's me. And if you think Weibig wins, that's also cool. But the agenda in this video is crazy, because he thinks Weibig absolutely like one-shots him. And that's just obviously biased. I'm sorry. He couldn't even one-shot the Ultimates that Atomix one-shotted.